My name's Ihor Gadasz. Ihor Gadasz. I was born in Ukraine. I was born in Sloboda Zolota, which is in the township of Berezhany, near Ternopil. Came to Canada in April 1949. Yes, there were many reasons. Ostensibly, we were refugees after World War II, fleeing the Russian advance into Ukraine. From the story my father told us was that he had been in the underground, and he heard from his friends in the village administration that the KGB had marked him for exile, for packing up in exile into Siberia with his family. So he figured he better head out west to avoid that fate. There were 3 families with 6 children in the village, and they gathered their horses and wagons, packed some of their belongings and enough food. I understand this was in late fall or winter, and they set out west towards the Hungarian Czechoslovak border, more or less. That's what I understood. 4. My parents and my brother, and there was another family, each with 2 girls. There might have been other people. My aunt eventually came, but I think she somehow came separately. We traveled westward for a while. Eventually, I was told that the German army, we were again into occupied German territory by now, eventually confiscated our horses and wagons and put us on trains. And I don't know the route or the direction, but we ended up in various temporary places where we stayed in Germany for the next 4 years. At one point, he worked at a sawmill. This was in the summer. I remember living in a wooded area that was very pleasant. Another time, we were in a so-called DP camp, which I remember quite vividly. It consisted of many barracks and probably several hundred, if not more, refugees. So much so that we were there for a while, and the camp had school for children. They had a church. We celebrated the Christmas and Easter. There were all sorts of community organizations that the adults participated in. After a while, this all stopped, and then we would be in another camp, in another location, and carrying on in much the same way. They were all different. I remember in some places we stayed in some sort of towns or villages in Germany that were quite interesting. This one camp where we spent a while was interesting because it was on a river, so I remember trying to learn to fish there. In another camp, we were more like in almost modern or new high-rises, multi-story buildings that that we occupied. Well, mainly I am just vaguely aware of what my parents did, but certainly I remember church services, I remember school and playing with the kids, and I remember particularly there were traveling groups of people that came to sing. There were the Banderist choir at that time was traveling, and they gave a concert in one of the places we were staying, and that was quite memorable. We had some relatives in Canada that had emigrated in the 1920s. They were distant relatives, and we were in touch with them. But in 47, 48, Canada wasn't accepting any refugees from Germany. So actually, we signed up to go to Australia. And we were pretty well decided on doing that because there was no other alternative. My parents no way wanted to remain in Europe, fearing the communists, of course. And in 48, 49, the government of Canada changed their policy and started accepting immigrants. So our relatives in Kitchener sponsored us under some conditions, and then somehow arranged for whoever arranged for our transport, I don't know. Well, all I can remember is it was a big adventure. It was, I don't know whether I could say it was fun, but it was very interesting. We were seeing lots of different stuff. There were 6 kids, sometimes more, that we spent a lot of time together. I don't remember it as being particularly tough or difficult, but it was interesting. Yeah, we came by boat, the Cunard steamship lines. I looked forward to the ocean trip. I'd never seen the ocean, so it was quite an experience to finally arrive at the port, see the ocean, get on the boat, and the boat trip itself. I was seasick for the first half of it, but it was interesting. At that point, there was only the 4 of us that traveled. Our friends had relatives in America, and actually one of the fathers in our group was an American citizen. He had immigrated before to the States, had become an American citizen, then came back and got caught up in the war, of course, in our town. So he and his family moved to New York, and they had no trouble going there, so they went independently. And the other people also went to Chicago. The immediate family was my father, Stefan, Nadia, and my brother, Yuri. When we left Ukraine, I would have been 4, and Yuri was 2.5, just under 3. I figure my mother was about 20-something, and my father was 35 or so. Yeah. So in 49, I was 8 years old. We took the train from Halifax and ended up in Kitchener, which is where our relatives were. And my father was obliged to work on construction for a year, and my mother helped out with the family, the Ukrainian family we stayed with. They had a restaurant, sort of a home type of restaurant. They lived there, and we lived in their basement. My mother worked as a cook in the kitchen for a year, and after the year was up, they realized that most of the immigrants from and their friends, acquaintances were in Toronto. So in the summer of '50, I guess it was, we rented some sort of a truck and moved to Toronto. The main thing I remember is before traveling to Canada, my parents had a big travel trunk constructed by a carpenter, a friend of theirs, and they kept it at home as a storage place for blankets and linen, and it survived to the present day, as well as a cardboard type of suitcase from Europe. I imagine they got it in Germany. Particularly, I remember our Christmas celebrations, which was the high peak of life there, and having a Christmas tree every Christmas, and the fun it was. So they also brought some Christmas tree decorations to Canada as sort of one of the nice and valuable things that we liked in the DP camps. From Ukraine itself, I don't recall anything in particular. I remember they brought some bedspreads, velvet, colorful, gaudy bedspreads that we used in Canada for a long, long time, and then they disappeared. So I don't know whether they came from Ukraine or from Germany. My parents basically felt that all this was a temporary thing, and they were ready to go back to Ukraine the minute the situation changed, and they believed that for the first 10 years in Canada. I think we attempted to live life as we had lived in Ukraine and Germany. Speaking Ukrainian was important. The traditions, the holiday traditions, the church going was important. I remember coming with the relatives. Our favorite form of entertainment was singing Ukrainian folk songs. And the relatives, the Canadians, enjoyed that in particularly because they hadn't been doing that anymore, but they liked the music. We went to Ukrainian school, read Ukrainian books, eventually joined Ukrainian youth groups within a year or two of arriving in Canada, and went to summer camp and had Ukrainian friends. Yes, I know them all. I know the melodies, but I can't sing them. I love them. And my kids, they went to Ukrainian school and to Ukrainian youth camps, so they learned similar songs. Yeah, well, there's so many feelings. So certainly, I do feel fortunate, and Canada has been a land of great opportunity for us. Something that when I see the way some of my family that remained in Ukraine fared during the time we were in Canada, we certainly avoided many of the problems. Recently was very uplifting because of all the recent events that had happened. It was very pleasant to see, the changes that have happened in the past 30 years since we were there and after independence, so that one is hopeful that that will continue and not be interrupted. Many reasons for that, many reasons. I was interested in working with people and helping people. I was interested in science and education, and at the time it seemed like a excellent career choice, and I felt lucky to be able to go to school and qualify for admission and pursue that line of work.